Hello everyone. Today we're talking about Dr. Mike Israetel. And in case you don't know, I made a video about him a few weeks ago in which I critique his philosophy in general by attacking the foundations that he laid out in one of his first videos of his channel. In case you don't know him or you don't know what my sort of critique was, you can go check that video. I will probably link it here. But anyways, Dr. Mike uploaded a new video yesterday in which he goes into even more detail about his philosophical beliefs, and this time specifically about morality. The video is called "Is Objective Morality Possible?" And spoiler alert, Dr. Mike thinks that it is. I would like to make the case, however, that he's confusing a few terms and not actually making the case that he thinks he's making. So let's start from the beginning. In the first 10 minutes of his video, Dr. Mike gives us two different definitions. And this is really important because I think that implicitly, even though he doesn't mean to, he's making something like a fallacy of equivocation, whereby a person uses two different definitions of the same term interchangeably during the course of their argument. So let's take a look. The first definition he gives is about what it means to have an objective morality, and it goes something like this. An objective morality is a code of conduct that is independent of subjective stances or values. If I'm not mistaken, he said subjective preferences or values. So basically, it's word for word, and that's a really good definition. I really like that because he makes it clear that what it means for there to be objectivity is that this thing that we're talking about, whatever it is true no matter what anyone thinks or wants or likes. It is stands independently true. That's a really good definition and it clears up everything. However, unfortunately, a few minutes afterwards, he gives a definition of morality in general, not of objectivity, but of morality. And he says word for word the following. Morality is an involved framework of action and thought, designed for the purpose of enhancing survival and replication outcomes for the genes and memes that control such actions and thoughts in a social setting. Now, this is a big problem. Why is it a big problem? Well, in a way, this second definition that Mike Israetel gives answers the question that he's already asking. In other words, he is presupposing the thing that he is trying to prove. What do I mean by this? Well, when we're talking about whether morality is subjective or objective, most of the time the question is, can there be a purpose of morality or an outcome or an action or any of those things, pick whichever one you want depending on the theory, that is objectively the better thing to want, the better thing to have or to do, right? Objectively, like not based on whatever your preference is or whatever your value, your subjective value happens to be. But this definition that Mike gives already answers that. He says morality is an evolved system that has the purpose of reproducing genes and surviving. So he already gives the answer to his question without argument. He says that's the definition. So by definition, morality is something that should, this is important here, morality is by definition something that should make people survive and make it more likely to reproduce and replicate certain genes. But if that's your definition, then you already hit that should, that first should, which says you should do X or you should do Y, that fundamental first should is already presupposed. So now you can just go back to your definition of objectivity and say, well, look, there can be objectivity in morality since we can go to that goal of reproducing genes and surviving, and we can ask the question, what's the most efficient way to do so? What's the best way to do so? And that question can be answered objectively because we can measure things. We have science, we have all of those things. And he talks about it in length in the video very well. And nobody would disagree with that. There is obviously, at least hypothetically, a best way, or a most efficient way to achieve survival and reproducing genes and stuff like that. So we can get there objectively. But then there is this sleight of hand where it's like, okay, you can objectively get to that point in a best way possible, or in a worse way, or in an even very, very, very bad way, right? And so morality is solved. You have objective morality right there. We can get to reproducibility and survivability in the most objective way possible, and there you have it. This is objective morality. But not so fast. I said before that it's a bit like a fallacy of equivocation, but not exactly. Because the first definition, which says that morality is the moral code that is objective morality, is a moral code that is independently of subjective stances and values, etc. The other definition that you gave about morality, which is an evolved framework, which has this certain goal, already includes a subjective value, a subjective stance. Because, you see, you are a subject, I am subject, and as a group, humans are a collection of subjects, right? So, when you say that morality is just designed to help us survive and reproduce certain genes, well, you already have a subjective element there. You're already assuming that, this subjective desire to reproduce and this subjective desire to survive is somehow the only desire that is important. It is the objectively good desire. It is the thing that upon which the rest of morality should be based. But you give no argument for that. You just presume it. You say, everyone wants to survive. That's sort of instinctual. We're evolved creatures. We're biological machines, not actual machines. And so our morality should be based around reproducibility and survivability. Why? It's a pretty simple question. Why should it be that and not some other desire? Not some other end goal? Why should the end goal be the enhanced survivability and the reproducibility of those specific genes? That's the question that we're trying to answer when we talk about objective or subjective morality. So, by making the case for an objective morality, unfortunately, you made the case for subjective morality. Or, if you want to call it a bit different, an intersubjective morality. You see, basically the point is that if morality is just defined as that which aims to increase survivability and reproducibility, then fine, you can say you have an objective way of getting there, an objectively better way of getting there. The question is this destination objectively a better destination than other ones? Can you answer that question? And my suspicion is that Dr. Mike would see this as sort of a foul play. He would see it as sort of like cheating, as sort of like not playing the game of language that morality is supposed to play. But that's the point. At the end of the day, you make the case that you can find an objectively better way to get at a certain outcome. But you don't tell us why that outcome is objectively good. Why is it objectively good to survive and to reproduce and etc.? That's just an instinct, right? He talks about feelings a lot. Like, well, it's all feelings sometimes when it comes to morality. I mean, isn't this need for reproducibility and survivability also based on a feeling? Isn't it also sort of an instinct, if you don't want to say the word feeling? Why should we follow that instinct? Why is that instinct objectively good? Why is that so logically why is it that this is the logical morality and not something else? Maybe the outcome that I want to fight for, let's say, is just happiness, right? So hedonism. By the way, I don't, but let's say I'm a hedonist, right? And I tell you, no, objective morality, it should be based on the outcome of happiness, right? My personal happiness in this life, no matter what, even if it's self-destructive or whatever, the maximum amount of happiness throughout my life, that's what should be the goal of morality. How would you go about combating that? Because your point is a meta is a point is not a meta point, right? So your point is, this is what you want. You want survivability and reproducibility. Here is an objective way to get there. But what if that's not what I want? What if my point is that what I want is something else? How do you change my mind on that? It seems that there is no answer here. It seems that Dr. Mike and a lot of people who want to argue for objective morality are actually arguing about a subjective outcome that they want, a subjective attitude which says we should go towards that outcome instead of that outcome, and just confusing it with objective logic, or saying that this is what everyone wants. And even if that's what everyone wants, you would still have to show that what everyone wants is important, which is still not shown. Even if you say that, well, you can't make this counter argument, Elias, because actually it's universal. Everybody wants to survive and everybody wants to reproduce and get their genes to the next generation. Fine. Why should I care about what everyone wants? This is supposedly objective, right? It is stance independent, meaning no matter how many stances there is, it is stance or stances independent. Okay, there is 8 billion stances which say we want to survive. Why should I care? Why should, not I as in Elias, why should it be that morality objectively cares, right? If it's objective, it shouldn't matter how many people or whoever wants it. What should matter is whether it's true, whether the morality that you're advocating for is objectively true. So why is it objectively true that it is objectively good to survive and reproduce? It's a pretty simple question, but I think it's pretty intractable in the way of thinking that Dr. Mike tends to support. So if you are going to give the definition of objectivity that you gave, and then you're going to give a definition of morality that includes in it your subjective preference or your subjective or the outcome that you subjectively want, then those two things cannot be talking about each other. Those two definitions, I mean. So all in all, that's pretty much it. My basic problem with Dr. Mike's point is that he's using the word objective morality in different ways. Or in other words, he defines his outcome, the outcome that he subjectively wants, into the definition of the morality he's trying to prove, and then he uses objectivity to see whether we can measure the efficiency of getting to that outcome objectively. So it's this sort of wordplay where later on he can say this is objective morality, because objectively we can track how to get to that outcome more efficiently, and that's true. So it's objective. But no, actually we can objectively get there, better or worse, but whether getting there is good or bad has not actually been explained or defended. So thank you for listening to me, and if you agree, please share this video and leave your comments down below. Thank you.